Hey guys, my name is Rachel Zalucki and welcome to Everybody's a Critic. Tonight I'll be discussing the least favorite film to come out of True False Film Fest, Flight of a Bullet. As usual, I have a lot of unsolicited opinions, so buckle up friends, this one's filled with spoilers. True False is no stranger to artistic conceptual films, so the idea of a one-shot documentary about Ukrainian soldiers fighting Russian separatists was not exactly unusual. However, director Beata Bubenik may have bitten off more than she could chew with this flick. The opening 20 minutes focuses on a collapsed bridge in rural eastern Russia with a mysterious man and woman trapezing around the rubble, filming everything and everyone around them. Various locals begin to question whether or not the people behind the cameras have permission to shoot the footage of the area or the people. Suddenly, a local volunteer militia begins to fire shots into the crowd and aggressively detains one man in the midst of the chaos. The man is tied up and thrown in the back of their car to be taken to the barracks, known as the basement, and interrogated. The next 45 minutes, absolutely nothing. Well, not necessarily nothing, just enough to elicit no sort of emotion from the audience. Once the man is brought to the basement, there is a tense interrogation scene where the masked militiamen yell and scream at the poor man with no apparent direction or purpose. At least from a viewer's standpoint, two things became obvious. One, the man they detained was not a separatist, and two, this militia does not know how to interrogate someone properly. After the militia concedes that the man is not a terrorist, they dig for information about the separatist, which lasts another 10 minutes, and once again reminds us that these men are volunteers. Talk about community service, am I right? From here on out, Bubenik decides the most important thing happening at this base camp is a phone call happening between one of the soldiers and his wives. This happens to be maybe the most aggressive phone call I personally have ever witnessed. This man is obviously struggling with the fact that his wife is cheating on him, but he takes it an extra step further by calling her the C word a few times and threatening to beat her up and or shoot her. You know, whatever he's in the mood for. After the first 10 minutes of the phone call, Bubenik stays focused on the phone call for, that's right, another 10 minutes. She then briefly cuts away to watch her friends smoke and talk about having sex with her, only to come right back to the phone call. Riveting cinematography. From this point until the credits, Beata makes a sandwich, her friends make a few more thinly veiled sexual advances towards her in front of her husband, and then everybody leaves. I've never been so glad to see a movie end, but I do admit her vision was not completely misconstrued. The point of the movie was to convey that war is surprisingly mundane and that the people involved are equally mundane, especially opposed to the common notion that they are monsters. However, it was probably a little too mundane for my taste. As a final point, I would also like to bring up the fact that a police report has been filed against this movie for allegedly inciting ethnic hatred. In addition to that, it has been brought under fire for not editing out the names or hometowns of those detained by the volunteer militia, as well as using footage of a man who died a few weeks after the events of the film, after family members of the deceased specifically requested the footage to be taken out. So all in all, this movie had potential to be one of the most interesting films to come out of True False Film Fest, but dropped the ball and potentially became one of the worst. That's it for this week's episode of Everybody's a Critic. Thank you for tuning in.